What's up, guys? So today we are sitting in a piece of Lamborghini history, the one-of-one Diablo GT2, and guess what? I'm gonna be one of a few people on Earth to drive it for the first time, and I'm sharing it with all of you. So I just had the opportunity to drive the one-of-one Diablo GT2, and I have to tell you, this is one of the most interesting pieces of history that Curated has ever had the opportunity of buying. Now, it's sort of a crazy story, and I have to say, not much is online about this car. Even me, as sort of a so-called Lamborghini historian, I didn't know much about this car, but this car tells such a special story and a part of Lamborghini's racing history and a part of the Diablo history. So, upon first getting the call about this car, all I had known about it was that it actually sat in the museum between 1998 and 2015. And I remember seeing photos. There's a great photo of Valentino standing in the museum, and behind him is this orange insane Diablo. But there's really not that much information online. And once you start digging, you actually find old historical photos showing this car at the Bologna Motor Show. And then if you dig a little bit more, you see some photos at a few races. And essentially what we learned over time in doing research, that this car started life as a Diablo SVR chassis. It was pulled off the production line, and at that time Lamborghini was working with an organization, the Stefan Rattel organization. Now, essentially, Lamborghini had produced their first spec series, which was the Diablo SVR, and this car was essentially going to be, I would say, the culmination of their efforts into a real GT racing program. The goal of this car was to go and race the famous 24-hour of Le Mans. Now, what's so interesting about this car is it's the first time we see a lot of unique features, and let's take a look at this. The first sort of noticeable thing about this car is it's the first time we see these open headlights, which were later used on the Diablo GT, the Diablo 6.0, and all of the Diablos starting in 1999. These are the famous 300ZX headlights that everyone gives us a hard time about, but this is the first time we see this, and this is in 1997. If you look at old press photos, you can actually see the front bumper was a little different. And for real Lamborghini experts, you know that the front bumper was originally designed from an SE30. The next biggest sort of change or sort of unique feature about this car is the front hood. If you really first look at this car, most people think it's a GT, but the GT didn't come out until 1999. So this is essentially the first Diablo with the GT style hood. And then once you look at the front of the car, you realize it's probably the first Diablo with this wider track and those air scoops on the side. Now, one of the main factors of this car that we were trying to understand was this car actually went through 2 or 3 developments. The car started to test in 1997. It was shown at a few motor shows, and the front bumper actually had a much larger lower lip. Now you can see this front bumper looks very similar to an SE30, with the exception of it no longer has the lower lip. Now, once we started to dig into Lamborghini archives and records, we learned that this is the only Diablo GT2 that was ever made. And what's so interesting is actually the car was believed to be the first time the 6.0 engine was ever tested. So this was the quote-unquote test mule for the first 6.0 engine. And this engine was basically a further development of the famous Yoda kit and the GT kit that you would have seen, the massive induction. Very, very similar and almost identical to the GT, and very similar to the original Yoda kit. So if you look at historical photos of this car, at some point it was actually photographed with like sort of an SVR style Yoda hood. So it had the bigger scoops. This was later modified to these like trumpet things, which are really just restrictors for FIA. As you can see, the hood was modified as well, and this is the way the car sat in the museum. We've talked about going back to the original way it was first shown to the press in the first motor show, but I believe this is the best way to preserve its current purity today. So recently, Barton from our team found an incredible series of historical photos of this car as it raced in France in period. And from all of our research, we believe it only ever raced 2 races. I believe it was Spa-Francorchamps and one other race. And at some point in end of 1997, Lamborghini added this insane diffuser that comes underneath, all carbon and carbon Kevlar, and this is the way the car actually sat in the museum after this was added. Now, another very important feature of this car is during testing and during development, it was believed that the car was in some sort of an accident, and the body was actually repaired. And when they did that, they actually changed all of the body panels that were not carbon to full carbon. So this is actually, in addition to being the first 6-liter Diablo ever made, this was the first full carbon fiber Diablo ever produced. So unfortunately, this car never made it to Le Mans, and it never made it to any other long endurance famous races. That being said, it sat in the factory museum, and it was an important part of Diablo history, Lamborghini racing history, and the development of Lamborghini as a brand. It's such an honor to have it here in Miami, and it's sort of shocking that we even had the opportunity to purchase it. So cars like this sort of remind us of the reason why we do what we do at Curated. It's not every day that you get a call about a factory museum, one-off Lamborghini, or any one-off car for that matter. This is a piece of Lamborghini history. It sort of documents the development of the Diablo. It documents their development of their racing history, which is now a pretty big part of their company history. And even though it never made it to Le Mans, it didn't win any races, it's so important to have it here, document it, and share it with the next generation. I'm absolutely in love with this, and I have to say, it's a true honor and pleasure to be part of its history at Curated.
Oh.